Very interesting today on Cricbuzz In Conversation, because we've got someone who embodies the modern game almost better than anybody else. He's led the renaissance of English cricket. He's a World Cup winning captain, and he speaks his mind. He speaks well. So delighted to have Eoin Morgan with us. Eoin, thank you very much for joining us.
Harsha, thanks for having me. Glad to be on.
2019, just over what, a year ago, do you still wake up thinking, did it really happen? Are we really world champions?
Well, it's just over a year ago now to the day of the final, which was the most incredible game of cricket I've ever seen or played in. And I continue to watch it back because there are so many moments throughout the day where the game ebbs and flows and there's still that tense feeling, pensiveness throughout Lords, that just really does get that buzz back that we had on the day. But it was an incredible year, certainly for English cricket, winning the World Cup, and then the dramatic nature in which the Ashes was drawn. I really do think that it was a great year for promoting the game and getting cricket back at the forefront of everybody's mind in England.
You don't strike us, and we look at you from a distance as being a very emotional kind of person, but you still get emotional about that day?
Yeah, I do. It's taken some time to set in. You're right. You know, in the moment, I try and stay as much as I can in the reality of things that are going on. I tend not to get carried away, too high, too low, and try and stay in the reality. And for me personally, it helps my game. It helps my batting, bowling, but overall as a captain, it helps me make clear-cut decisions. And I think if that can rub off on other players at the time, I think that's a huge positive. So I use that as a tool or mechanism to keep me calm.
I thought the genesis of 2019 actually lay in Australia in 2015. I was there watching that tournament. I was intrigued by the way England were playing, because the world had sort of moved on. It was almost like the T20ization of 50-over cricket, and yet England were almost in a time warp. And I was very curious to know, was it because England just didn't prioritize white ball cricket at that time? Was it just the approach? Was it the kind of players available? And that was the best they could do. What was it about 2015? Because I believe that laid the platform. Almost like England had to lose 2015 to achieve 2019.
Yeah, I actually totally agree with you. I think 2015 was the cornerstone of the start of our success. It really was the trigger to a lot of things happening in English cricket. And one of the most important things, I think, on our journey was the appointment of Andrew Strauss. He was appointed straight after the 2015 World Cup. He had watched everything that had gone on in the 2 years leading into the 2015 and wasn't surprised by the way that we played and the outcome of that World Cup. It was humiliating in the way that we played, but in the fashion that we were knocked out was humiliating. So for him coming in such a pivotal role, making big clear-cut decisions in the way that he wanted white ball to move forward and for the priorities to sit alongside each other. So the two priorities were 50-over cricket and test match cricket, and they would sit alongside each other, which has never happened before in English cricket. So for him to come in and say that gave me a boost, both keeping me on as captain, but also giving a blank sheet of paper and saying, right, what do we need to do to bridge the gap between where we are now in 2015 and being competitive in 2019 World Cup? Because he saw that as a huge opportunity for us to bring cricket back to England.
To draw a corporate parallel, it was almost as if pink slips were being handed out, like they are in this pandemic. Pink slips are being handed out. That's it. Thank you very much. It's good knowing you. And you survived. Was there any talk of why you survived? What was it that Andrew Strauss saw? Did he see you as a modern torchbearer of white ball cricket to take you through? What were the first conversations when he called you up and said, there's so many pink slips, but you're not among them?
Yeah, I ask him all the time because I feel lucky to be kept on, in truth. And he thought for a long time about, the top four sides in that 2015 World Cup all played an aggressive brand of cricket. And I played under Straussy when he was captain, and I played with him at Middlesex. And sort of when I first came into the international scene, that was the way I played. Naturally, I played quite an aggressive brand of cricket, and he thought that I could embody that as good as anybody. So to go out and lead the side, and if I could lead from the front, that would have quite a big impact. So that was his reason for keeping me on.
And what was the first document that you wrote, if at all? I mean, writing is a figurative way. You might have written it in your head, whatever. What was the first document you wrote? Because the side that took the field for the first game after 2015 was literally played under the same banner, but was a different team.
Yeah, it was a different team. I think the biggest thing for us is taking away any sort of stigma around taking risks. So we had to bat deep. We had to find a way of moving from an average first innings score of 270 to the rest of the world of 315. And that was only going to get higher and higher as we moved through the 4 years. So trying to instill the mindset with a young group of players who naturally their default game was to be aggressive, was that taking risk on here is going to be really good fun, and we're going to have a great time along this journey. But the consequence of you not performing isn't going to be you're going to be dropped after 5 games. You're going to be given an ample amount of time to prove yourself and replicate what you're doing in county cricket on the international stage. And I don't think anybody thought within the group, when we sat down and planned and selected the group of players that we did, that there'd be such a quick turnaround. In that first game that we played against New Zealand in 2015, we scored 400, which it was just remarkable. And if there was ever a template that we were looking for to have a benchmark against, I mean, it was the first game that we played. So it was an amazing start.
Did you just use a word that I've never heard associated with English one-day cricket before? You used the word fun.
Yeah,
I've never heard that word associated. England always look grim.
No, I'm all about fun and enjoying life. I think, I suppose, in when everybody thinks about Test match cricket, everybody thinks about a hard-fought, resilient game that tests all aspects of the game, which is extremely true. But guys do have fun when they play it, and it's never sold that way. And I think it's extremely important because all forms of the game are extremely tough. Test match cricket is the hardest, but there are pressure situations throughout all 3 formats that you need to go through some arduous times in order to succeed in those moments. So hard times, they're hard to get through unless you have fun getting there. So it's an important part of what we do.
What were the kind of conversations you had with the likes of Roy, Butler, Stokes, those kind of players? Are you the kind who has one-on-one and say, right, gentlemen, everything's going to change? How did that work? Because everybody must have been low on confidence and waiting to play differently.
Yeah, I think there was a new sense of energy around the way that we played and the squad that we selected. Because everybody looked at the side and thought, these are guys who had been sitting in county cricket for quite some time, playing this aggressive brand of cricket, but couldn't find a way into the senior team. So the exciting side of that, I suppose, rubbed off on the senior players and leaders within that group. And all we asked them to do, myself, Paul Farbrace and Trevor Bayliss, is to embody what we're trying to do. I mean, the first game that we played, Joe Root scored his fastest ever 100, and it was 72 balls. Josh Butler then came in and followed it up with a 57 ball 100 or 60 ball 100. And we just asked guys to continue to buy into this way in which we wanted to play, because we thought it would take a long time for us to transition our natural game all the way to where the rest of the world was.
It was almost like Torah, attack. You got what, 18 350 plus scores? You just changed the normal in the way you played your cricket. And was there ever any doubt? Because England always went out saying, I think the numbers are telling us 286 is a winning score on this track. You know, England were always sort of very that kind of one-day side. So did you just think, hang on, what have I just unleashed here? What if one day we are 29 for 6? As happened one day, I think.
Yeah, I mean, there were games we were 20 for 5. I think there were 3 games in particular. We were 20 for 5 at Lords against South Africa in a bilateral series. We were 8 for 5 at Adelaide against Australia. And I suppose the biggest worry for me is after performances like that, and bear in mind both games, I think we scored 200 or 220 and the opposition chased them 6 or 7 down. So we weren't necessarily completely out of the game. But the biggest worry for me at the time was that we would lose confidence in the mindset and the game plan that we were trying to achieve. Because of surrounding pressures or perceptions, we might go back to, oh, well, let's just try and get 270. I think it was the third game in the first series that we played, we were bowled out for under 300. It was 290, the 46th over. And that was a huge test for us because in previous England teams that I played in before, we would sit around and talk about batting out the last 4 overs, which is just, it's ridiculous when you think about it, because throughout the whole innings run, for getting 340 and posting a match-winning score, to talking about defending the last 4 overs of the game, which is ridiculous. So our whole meeting the next day was about being better at playing those 50 overs and the mantra that we're trying to play and embody. And we sort of try and put that to bed early. And then the following game, New Zealand posted 350 against us and we chased it down in 43 overs. So that mantra continued, but it was important for us to stay up. Well, I suppose recognise when things were creeping in and nip them in the bud straight away.
How do you handle different kinds of players? I mean, post 2015 came the advance and the heartbreak together at the 2016 T20 World Cup. And there was Ben Stokes, 19 to defend. Are you the kind who puts your arm around him? Are you the kind who just says, look, he's a free spirit, he's volatile, let him be? How do you handle someone like him? Because, I mean, in the last 3-4 years, he can do no wrong.
No, but Ben's one of the most incredible players that we have. And I think with the group of players, particularly that lifted the World Cup trophy last year, they're so talented, smart, just wholehearted cricketers that commit to everything the team wants to do. And I think as a leader, there's never one conversation that can ever turn a corner. It's always continuously trying to build trust with guys. So when it comes to making big decisions under pressure, both sides are trusting each other. There's that huge element of somebody listening, taking it in, taking it on board, and then trying to execute what they're doing. And I suppose over the 4-year journey, the biggest thing for me is because we had such a talented group of players, it's actually not getting in the way of fulfilling that player's talent. I think the perception is that a captain or a coach will be hands-on the whole time, guiding people in the right direction and telling them what to do. My experience and throughout our journey has been that the more freedom that we've given guys, one, the quicker they've learned and the quicker that they've progressed, but it's also meant that they've given more to other players because they've talked about their journey of learning a particular skill or going through a particular experience and what they've done. And I think that happened in the final. In 2016, Ben obviously bowled the last over and it didn't go his way, and it had a big effect on him moving on from there and what he learned from that.
So what kind of conversations would a captain have with someone like that evening? Do you just leave him alone and say, look, it doesn't help, he's feeling terrible anyway? Or do you think, no, I think he needs an arm around his shoulder?
No, of course. I think the big thing for him is knowing that we're all there to support him. I mean, the game wasn't won and lost in 1 over. We only posted 150. And I thought we did extremely well to get to the last over and have so many runs in the bank. So the fact that we're all in it together and supporting Ben just because Ben bowled the last over was a big thing. And I think getting over that and progressing through it took time. It just doesn't happen overnight. It's quite a big milestone in somebody's life. But going into the Super Over in last year's World Cup, Ben walked up to Jofra Archer and he was thinking about saying something because he knew exactly what he was going to go through and his thoughts and his feelings. and went up to him and said, basically, Joff, this over is not going to define your career. And Joffrey said, thank you, and walked away. And said he walked away with a feeling that, you know what, he's one of our best players, probably going to be one of our best ever cricketers. Coming up and saying something like that has just taken quite a lot of pressure away from me. Now I feel good. So that just goes to show how much Ben continues to give, even when he's going out in that Super Over to field.
I was going to ask you about that, because when India won the 2011 World Cup, I think when they got to the final, playing at home in the final, much like England were at home in the final, a lot of talk 2 days before was, let's get failure out of our mind. Let's not think it's the end of the world. And there was a lot of talk about that with Gary Kirsten and the others. I wanted to ask you about that, because just before 2019 was the 2018 Football World Cup, and it's coming home, right? It's coming home everywhere. We were in England. Every time I turned on the TV, read the papers, it's coming home, it's coming home. Was there pressure on you saying, look, the footballers did, but we've got to bring it home?
Yeah, I think it was. I think one of the things, pre-starting the World Cup, we actually had the England football manager, Gareth Southgate, come into our camp in Cardiff and talk to us about their experience during the World Cup, because football is everything to everybody around the world. It's the most popular sport, I think it will be for some time. And particularly at home, they're under an unbelievable amount of pressure. And we asked them, how did they deal with that? Was there any certain mechanism? And his simple answer was that pressure is in the eye of the beholder. It is only self-inflicted. And it's your perception of everything else that lets it mount and continue to mount if you let it. But otherwise, there are ways of dealing with it. And I think a lot of guys came out of that situation thinking, yeah, I think we're going to be all right. We found a way to deal with it if it arises. And I think the evidence in that is that, I suppose, coming back from losing against Sri Lanka, losing against Australia, and having to win 2 games to get through to the semi-final, I think the way in which we played, we showed that we had ways of dealing with it.
How did you, for example, address the Archer issue before the World Cup? I know it's been written about a little bit, but here's a team that's done really well for you. One of them's going to miss out because of this new kid on the block, this new superstar, flashy young man pops in. And what happens to all the loyal guys who've been around? What were your thoughts on that? Were you always clear that Archer is in, it doesn't matter? How did you handle the insecurity among the players? Which one of us is that arrow going to come and stop on?
Yeah, throughout our whole journey in the lead into the World Cup, for the 4 years, we always talked about having 17 or 18 players that could potentially be selected in that final 11. And I can remember sitting down at the final selection meeting thinking, we have 20 guys here who could easily play in our final 11. And we always continued with the mindset of, what we're doing right now will not be good enough in 2 weeks' time. We will still have to make improvements today in order to be good enough in 2 weeks' time, and continue that mindset, that growth mindset that is so important at an elite level to beat the best teams at the crucial moments. And whether that was selection, captain's tactics, players' judgment, there were always different things that we talked about. And I think integrating Jofra throughout that initial period, which was a very short one, was an extremely important part, because you can see, particularly when we had so much downtime and guys are relaxing and doing different things, you can see how other guys react to him being there, and also how he is around the group. And I thought he was welcomed brilliantly and bought into, then trusted things that we did, and bought into everything that we did. And I suppose when he played his first 2-3 games, I think everybody sort of could sit back and see Jofra's potential and the strengths that he offered. I mean, we talk about 3 parts of a 50-over game: first 10, middle 30, and then the last 10. And there are very few bowlers that can bowl in all 3 parts. But Jofra looked like he was going to be one of those bowlers. So he gave you an extra dimension to your bowling lineup, which would be improving our squad. So going with the principle of always trying to improve, guys were accepting that, yes, it would be a tough decision if it was made, but also it would benefit the side.
That final, then, what are you thinking? The morning of the final, and when it went into a super over, surely you're saying it's just a super over is a lottery. Because as captain, everyone's looking at you. We often say on comment, there's a captain cam. There's a camera always on you, but also there's 10 players looking at you. So what's going on in your head?
Yeah, on the morning of the World Cup final it's so exciting. I woke up early, I was down at breakfast early, I got to the ground early. And once I was at the ground, I was just so excited because we played Australia in the semi-final and won convincingly. And personally, I think it was the best performance we've ever played in a 50-over game against a really strong team who had beaten us convincingly in the group stages. And as players came in during the morning, there was just a huge sense of confidence and ease with the whole situation. And everything about getting there made me feel like we're just ready. Whatever happens today, we might win, lose, or whatever will happen. We're ready for this. And that was quite a nice feeling. And again, throughout the day, I tried to keep guys calm. It was an extremely...
Did you calm yourself?
Yeah, I think during the 50 overs, I feel that I was calm. I can't say I was calm after I got out for that maybe 10 minutes. I was extremely angry and disappointed with the way that I batted. But from there, I mean, the most unbelievable turn of events. We lost wickets early in the chase. The partnership between Stokes and Butler was brilliant. If one of them stayed till the end, we thought we would get over the line because we'd done it before. We always batted quite deep. We had that confidence. And then I suppose getting from there and continuing to lose wickets, we always thought Ben was going to be the key. And he ended up being the big key to the big door.
How does he take pressure? I mean, Rahul Dravid once said about MS Dhoni, he said, when I see him bat, I get the feeling it doesn't matter to him whether a team wins or loses. He's just that calm and focused and almost doesn't seem to matter. Is Ben Stokes like that? Because he's played so many big moments for England.
Yeah, I think he's grown into that player. I don't think anybody is born. I think people learn how to deal with those moments better than other people. And Ben is one of those players. And I think on the day, one of the little insights into how calm and clear he was thinking was the very last ball of the 50-over game. He got a knee-high full toss that he'd probably been waiting for the last 2 overs to hit into the grandstand. And he chipped it down the ground. And I remember after the super over and after everything had calmed down, I said, why didn't you hit that for 6 or 4? And he said, I thought if I hit it well, I'd get 2 and we'd win the game. But if I didn't, we would definitely get 1. We'd go to a super over and we'd win the game.
And he had the confidence. That's incredible.
Amongst absolute chaos and drama, that's what he was thinking.
It's a fascinating story, this England and white ball cricket, all that came before, where they're headed. We'll continue Cricbuzz In Conversation with Eoin Morgan in part 2.